Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Briar-Greaves Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company that you can count on. So whether it's auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance, Briar-Greaves Insurance are the best people in the business to work with. For more information, visit briargreavesinsurance.com or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. It is a Thursday edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Hope everybody is enjoying their day as we get closer to the weekend. It's our last show for the general public, and we legitimately are saving our best for the last, because we had some breaking news come up this morning to the point where we had to pivot our title for the podcast. Well, that's totally fine because we want to be as fresh, as new as we can possibly be. And of course, the news was earlier today that the Bucs have given contract extensions to the Bucs brass. General manager Jason Licht and head coach Todd Bowles have both been given contract extensions. They're going to be here for quite a bit, so we're going to break it all down on today's show. And of course, get your thoughts, your opinions from the Pewter people, everybody watching this show. So feel free to chime in the chat. We already got a lot of comments. We'll put some up. And of course, super chats get to cut the line. We're curious to see what you think about this move by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my co-host of the Pewter Report podcast, Adam Sly Slavon. Hello, Adam. What is going on this afternoon?
Hello, Matt. It's great to be on with you and talk about some news that sent shockwaves on a Thursday morning. Like, you're not expecting really like big news between mini camp and training camp, but just waking up, trying to get a nice start to the day, and you see, whoa, Todd Bowles and Jason Licht extended. That's big news. It's huge news. And to me, when I look at it, Matt, we could talk about it more, but stability being the theme for the Bucs for the rest of the decade. They're in the midst of like the best run in franchise history, and the good times are going to keep rolling.
Let the good times roll. I believe that's a song, as they say. And I'm in complete agreement with you. It's all about keeping the core together. And for several years, it was keeping the core players together, whether it was re-signing Mike Evans a couple of years ago, finding Baker Mayfield as their guy at quarterback, keeping Vita Vea under long-term contract signings, Tristan Wirfs as well, bringing back Levante David year in and year out. The Bucs have a core nucleus of players, but it goes beyond that. And we've seen around the league how important that stability, that foundation is from the top down. And it could have been a rocky road at one point, Adam. When Bruce Arians decided to retire, the Bucs were in flux a little bit because you knew Tom Brady wasn't going to be there forever, but Todd Bowles was able to stay the course. So we're going to get into everyone's opinions. We'll talk about Todd Bowles specifically. We'll talk about Jason Licht specifically as well. But Adam, give me your overall thoughts on what this means for the long-term future of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Again, when you look at it for the long-term vision of the Bucs, I mean, you're looking at a team that's going to be hovering right at the 500 mark or better for like the next 5 years. And as a team, you want that. You always want to be in the middle, in the thick of a playoff race. And I think that's what these moves signify, is that the Glazers have full faith in Todd Bowles to continue to improve. And for a 61-year-old head coach who's been in the NFL, coaching in various roles for decades now, I mean, he's still finding ways to evolve and change. And you look at the Bucs defense, maybe it hasn't been what it was in 2020 and 2021 when they were on the cusp or winning the Super Bowl. They kind of regressed a little bit. And I think some of those issues stem from personnel. But with the way that Jason Licht's been drafting, I mean, I really want to talk about that, because Jason Licht and his draft classes, each year he finds 4 starters somehow, some way. And for Todd Bowles, like, he has to love that. He has to know that this offseason they got better. They raised the floor of the cornerback position, the inside linebacker position. And I think as a result, you're seeing Todd Bowles be as confident as he's ever been. Like, he's willing to go out there and call players out, be that Bruce Arians a little bit. And I think that will do wonders for the defense, and they will maybe not back to the 2020 level, but they're going to be probably in the top half of the league in some defensive categories.
I understand, and we'll kind of weigh the positives and negatives of Todd Bowles and then talk about the positives that I don't even know if there's negatives with Jason Licht, but the positives and negatives with Jason Licht as well. But I understand that we live in a what have you done for me lately type of society and in the NFL in particular. But I also think that we can't always rush to make these rash decisions off of the jump based on a smaller sample size of things that have happened. And for that, I mean specifically with Todd Bowles, where everybody looks at the issues with the defense last season and playing soft zone coverage and not being able to get to the quarterback and the lack of interceptions. And I understand that completely and wholeheartedly. I mean, I think you and I, and really everyone at Pewter Report, has been very critical about what the defense did last season, even the year before with a couple of different things. But I would also argue and push back if we're talking about just the defense, and there's a lot more to Todd Bowles than just coaching the defense, as we've learned over the past couple of years, and with him being on the podcast and stuff like that. But if we're talking about the defense, which is Todd Bowles' bread and butter, there's no doubt about it. I mean, this is a man that orchestrated one of the greatest defensive performances of all time in that 2020 Super Bowl, which largely was because of what Todd Bowles decided to draw up and get going and create a lot of those turnovers. This is also the guy that came up with the game plan to move Zion McCollum at safety 2 years ago against the Eagles in the divisional in the wild card round of the postseason and absolutely clobbered the Philadelphia Eagles. And then the next season, the Eagles are going and winning the Super Bowl. So put on championship type of performances. But the big thing for me is, like, if you go back to the last year of Tom Brady in 2022, and remember everything that was going on. Tom Brady had a lot going on in his personal life. Rob Gronkowski wasn't there anymore. Antonio Brown wasn't there anymore. There was injuries along the offensive line that had to be replaced all at the same time. And I know it wasn't pretty, and the Bucs didn't have a winning record. Remember, they didn't have to play that last game of the season. They had already clinched the division. So they could have had a winning record. But it was the defense that won a number of those games for Tampa Bay. They were allowing 9 points, 10 points, 17, like barely allowing 20 points per game. And sure, some of that is talent, but a lot of that was Todd Bowles as well. And then you go into Baker Mayfield's first season, and the offense got it together later on in the season. But it was the defense that was a big part of Tampa Bay winning that game against Minnesota to begin the season, winning the next week, and just getting the job done and getting turnovers and things like that. So I think you got to look at the entire outline of what Todd Bowles has done as a defensive play caller, and then we could talk about him as a leader and a head coach as well. But to give up on Todd Bowles because of one bad defensive season, to me, is silly, especially when you add in Hassan Reddick at outside linebacker, David Walker, and everything before that you spoke about the draft class of Jason Licht, and now Benjamin Morrison and Jacob Parrish, and even like getting Sarasi Dennis for hopefully a longer time, and Zion McCollum progressing as well. I understand the negativity of last season, but at the same time, there was so much more that Todd Bowles brings to the table, just from a defensive standpoint, let alone what he can do as a head coach.
Yeah, and when you look at the defensive issues that really plagued the team last year, it does extend a little bit beyond just last year. When you look back to 2023, some of the issues with the pass defense. But I think what you're going to see, Matt, this season is that a lot of those issues will be resolved. And I think it stems and it starts from Todd Bowles having that eureka moment in the offseason where he's like, schematically, some things can change. I've done it this way for so long. It's just not working in the league anymore. So I think you're going to see some changes that will kind of alleviate those concerns a little bit. So I think Bucs fans should not be as concerned with Todd Bowles as they have been in recent years, because this is a different side to Todd Bowles. And having more pieces in the secondary, Antoine Winfield Jr. back, I think that in and of itself will do wonders. But it extends to Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, Tyke Smith playing full-time, another year of Zion McCollum. Jamel Dean isn't half bad when he's on the field. There's a reason they kept him in the fold. I think you're going to see so many of those parts really make a strong secondary. And then you have Hassan Reddick. If he hits his ceiling as a pass rusher, you're talking about a double-digit sacker. Yaya Diaby. Kalijah Kancey wants to lead the league in sacks, and he could have a good shot at being a double-digit sacker himself. So I think when you look at the defense, it's in the best spot it's been since Todd Bowles has been a head coach. And then you mentioned earlier, He's more than a head coach. He's a culture
Yeah.
builder. And you look at this team, it's as tight-knit as they've ever been. You have guys in there, they love playing for Todd Bowles. They love being in the meeting room. The secondary is like they're having a big session, making
Yeah.
popcorn, eating Chips Ahoy cookies. Like they're having a great time with him. And you see that just kind of rub off on all the players. Like this is a guy they want to play for. And the most stable organizations in the sport, you see them have a head coach for a long time. And the success, it might not be immediate. The Bucs, they haven't won a Super Bowl under Todd Bowles.
Correct.
But you look at a coach like Andy Reid for so many years in Philadelphia, he couldn't get the team over the hump, but then he goes to a different place, he has more success. And so I think for Todd Bowles, you've seen him have more success here than he did in New York. He's had some issues that have plagued him throughout his time as a head coach, but I don't think those issues will be out there as much this season.
So the Eureka moment, that was one of the biggest things of this offseason when we were all at the NFL annual meeting in West Palm Beach. And he was talking specifically about his Eureka moment with the defense. But I think internally as well, Todd Bowles had a Eureka moment with himself. And that even dates back to the NFL Combine when he's like, I want ball hawks. All I want is ball hawks. I don't care what position you play. If you take the ball away, come and play for my team, essentially. And then even him, I believe it was at the NFL annual meeting as well when he's like, no, I don't like our depth right now. This was before the draft. And then
crystal clear.
Like yeah. He could not be more adamant about it if he could. And that was what you were talking about before with taking a little bit of the Bruce Arians way and implementing it in his own style. You know, he doesn't have to be up there cursing 1,000 times. Like that's what Bruce Arians does, but that doesn't work for everybody. So I don't know exactly when it clicked for Todd Bowles, maybe during one session while he was at the Bucs facility and everything, watching tape or whatever the case may be. But I'm trying to phrase this the right way because he's still like, when he was on our podcast a couple weeks ago, he was still very funny and comical and stuff like that. And not that you need to be as a head coach, but at the same time, I think he's stripped away a lot of the BS and a lot of the, dancing around certain things and just getting straight to the point. And I think that's what's been an issue for Todd Bowles because we got to talk about some of the negativity as well. I think that's been part of the issue with Todd is that I get it. He's protective of his players. He doesn't want to act like they've done anything wrong. And then in the past, Todd would try to, back up some of the things that he's decided, but it just kind of makes him look silly. I think a good example, again, was that last year with Tom Brady, they lost a game to the Browns that they had no business losing. And it was tied late. And
I think David Njoku caught a touchdown in the end zone.
Yeah. So they tied it up. But before they went to overtime, the Bucs had a chance to go and get into field goal range. And something happened where it was like an incompletion. And then on second down, or they ran it, they didn't call a timeout, but then they got a big completion and then either didn't call a timeout or it was too late. And everyone was like, well, why didn't you call a timeout in the first place? And Bowles was saying that he was worried about creating a turnover and giving them the ball back. But it's like, you had Tom Brady. He had the lowest interceptions in the league at the time. And the Browns also had the lowest interception total in the league. And it was like, well, you're kind of contradicting yourself. And he's done that from time to time. The timeouts last season, not going for two. These are things where he says he trusts his defense. He believes in this. He believes in that. But we don't necessarily believe him when he's saying those things. Now, quietly, by hiring Zach Beastline to be your in-game management guy and help with the timeouts and when to go for two, that's addressing one of those things. But I think as well, his overall leadership has improved, and the way that he's just kind of point blank is another thing that we've seen that's been really important. And above all else, the Glazers love the moves that Todd Bowles has done this offseason, and that's a big reason why as well that he got this contract extension.
Yeah, and I think when you have the discussion about Todd Bowles, it's important to be objective, right? Because for all the good that he's done, there have been some issues that have plagued him throughout his tenure. Yes. And you mentioned the instance of the Cleveland Browns game. I go back to the whole Devin White fiasco in 2023, and you kind of understand it. He was trying to speak his way out of it and back his players, but there are instances where he backs himself into a corner a little bit, and his responses to some of the issues, the timeout decisions, the 2-point not going for it, he kind of puts you in a loop, and you're like, I don't understand. It's not that difficult. So I think with Todd Bowles, though, he understands that. In this offseason, you kind of seen him attack his weaknesses. And that's what you want to do. Whether you're a coach or a person, you want to find where you're not excelling and try to get better. And so he hired Beastline. He shuffled up the defensive coaching staff, which I think doesn't get talked about enough. Like, you're putting Larry Foote back where he was coaching Shaq Barrett and JPP. The outside linebackers are going to have more juice this year. I think Larry Foote arguably is probably the best defensive coach on the staff. And then you have Mike Caldwell back with the inside linebackers. That room got better. And so I think for Bowles and his growth as a head coach, you've seen it in the win-loss column. Each year the team's gotten better. But I also think behind the scenes, Todd Bowles has improved in some of the week-to-week and day-to-day things and managing this team, because it is a machine and you have to make sure all parts of the machine are chugging along. And so I think now they're in the best place that they've been in a while.
It's important that he's a player's coach. It's important that he gets along with each side because, there's not that many defensive guys that are head coaches anymore. It's very much skewed the other way. There's a lot more offensive coaches as head coaches than there are defensive coaches. But I don't want to sit here for the entirety of this podcast and just be like, oh, Todd Bowles is amazing. He's done this great. He's done that great. Because there have been some flaws. And yes, he has addressed a lot of them. But I think part of being a good coach is being able to work with the personnel you have and find the right type of game plan. So I understand, and Todd Bowles addressed it on this show about, like, why did he play so off coverage? But at the same time, you saw the same mistakes and mishaps over and over and over, whether it was miscommunication, whether it was, again, like just allowing a wide receiver open 5 yards down the field and then they catch it and take it another 15 yards, wherever the case may be. I know you can only combat that so much, but this year it very much feels like if you don't have the right game plan, that's on Todd Bowles, because the Bucs have fully addressed their depth in its entirety, whether it's outside linebacker, defensive line, cornerback. I think safety is really the only spot where maybe you could be like, what exactly is the depth after Winfield and Smith and Christian Izzy? And I do think it's important as well. Again, we talked about, we kind of addressed this, like the timeouts and not going for two. That's going to be covered with Zach Beastline this year. Mm-hmm. To me, he's got to keep improving with the wins and losses, though, because he goes from 8-9 to 9-8 and 10-7. And even at 10-7, it feels like there was still a little bit more that should have come from that 10-7 record. They had a bad loss at the time, it was a bad loss to the Broncos. Now the Broncos ended up being a playoff team. They had a bad loss to the Dallas Cowboys. They choked, and I mean it, they choked against the Atlanta Falcons twice, especially that Thursday night game where they had that game absolutely wrapped up. They got by the skin of their teeth in that overtime win against the Carolina Panthers. And I understand it, Adam. It's any given Sunday or Thursday or Monday, whenever they're playing.
Yeah.
But there were too many close calls, in my opinion, last season. And then another big thing that I don't think just moving Larry Foote to a new spot or hiring Mike Caldwell or hiring an in-game coach, the 3 to 4 game losing streaks every year since he's been the head coach, they've been able to survive. And let's admit it, they benefited from a bad NFC South division, especially his first 2 years as the head coach. There's no denying that. If they want to be taken seriously as a contender, as a team that could get to the NFC Championship game and play for the right to play in the Super Bowl, they at all costs have to avoid that 3 to 4 game skid. And their schedule, they are playing a first game schedule. I think it's a little more plausible and feasible than some of their other schedules. But there are a couple of pitfalls to fall into that 3 to 4 game losing streak, and that has to be avoided this year.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the Shia LaBeouf movie Holes, where there's like a bunch of holes
of
around.
Course, that's a classic, yeah.
Like Todd Bowles just really can't afford to fall into one of those holes.
Right,
and
digging
I mentioned
up holes, diggity. Sorry,
that was a great movie.
Yeah.
I talked to Jay Retcher a little bit earlier today, and I mentioned that, like, for Todd Bowles right now, there's no excuses, because Jason Licht, he's given him all the ingredients. He has all the pieces to make like something fantastic, but the team, they can't afford to have that 3 to 4 loss like stretch in the middle of the season. And I'd argue last year that they probably wouldn't have had Chris Godwin and Mike Evans been healthy during that stretch, because that was a stretch where they played against the 49ers, Baker Mayfield at 110 passing yards. I mean, if the offense had a little more firepower, I think down that stretch, they would have been able to close out those games. And so that's what I want to see from the Bucs team this season, is against the best teams, if they're healthy, the other team's healthy, can the Bucs win the close game? And I think if they execute the game plan that Todd Bowles has, this should be an 11-12 win team. And if it is, I mean, you see that progress again year to year, where the Bucs, they're continually improving. And I think next for Bowles, and we could talk about this, is the fact that he's 1-3 in the playoffs, Matt.
Yeah.
And you want, when it comes down to January, you want to see the Bucs take the next step. That's kind of what has kept him on the ropes of almost teetering on that hot seat, is that he hasn't gotten as far in the playoffs. They had that one playoff win back in Baker's first year, but last year the loss was demoralizing to the Commanders because the defense couldn't get off the field.
Could not get a stop in what, I mean, they got a couple fourth down stops, but did not force a punt and did not create a turnover. And I mean, you can't help but think, how does that season go for the Bucs if they were able to beat the Commanders? I think they still would have played Detroit next. Or maybe they would have played the Rams. Or the Eagles. I think they would have played the Eagles because the Rams would have been, because the Rams were a wild card team, I believe. But anyway, like, you can't help but think how that game is going to go. But there's another side of this that we haven't talked about yet. And if you read SR's Fab 5 last week, it kind of goes hand in hand with this, because Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk has discussed a ton about, he's already finding Bill Belichick's next job before Bill Belichick has even coached a game for North Carolina. And he's saying that Tampa's a big time spot, because it's kind of like the Tony Dungy situation all over again. And the Glazers have done wonky things with their head coaches. They gave John Gruden an extension and then fired him after. So, if the Bucs don't go far this year, Bill Belichick could come in and be Tampa Bay's coach next season.
Gosh.
It's a little bit of egg on his face with this extension today with Todd Bowles. But I also think, Adam, and this is kind of one of the biggest things, it's really more of as much of a Jason Licht thing as it is Todd Bowles, is I don't think Bill Belichick wants to go into a situation where he's not completely running the show the way that he was with the Patriots. And why would Jason Licht, a man that's been here for over a decade, want to give up that type of power? It goes back to, the Glazers are big fans of Todd Bowles, and I don't see Bill Belichick, especially after this new contract extension to Todd Bowles. I don't see Belichick making his way to Tampa unless he's going on vacation or something.
Yeah, and I thought that Scott Reynolds' column last week, it was like the final nail in the coffin to the Mike Florio kind of report of Bill Belichick, but this was like elite comedic timing by the Bucs. Be like, oh, Mike Florio's like, oh, Bill Belichick might come. Nope, we're going to extend Todd Bowles. We love Todd Bowles. And with Bill Belichick, I don't think he's getting another NFL head coaching job. And I think like that discussion can just kind of be ended. I mean, he's 74 years old. The autonomy that he had over the Patriots the last 4 years, it didn't lead to anything. They got worse every single year. He gutted the team, didn't draft well. And Jason Licht on the other side, like, he's been elite at drafting, elite at finding players. And I think another thing that led to the extension between Bowles and Licht is just the rapport that they have with one another. Like, they can bounce ideas off each other, and they're in full agreement. Like, Jason Licht was like, hey, Todd, I know we need defensive help. What about that Emeka Ibuka guy? He's pretty good, right? And Jason's like, okay, let's take him. We see him as a top 10 player on our board. And so I think for a defensive-minded head coach to be as open-minded as Bowles is to making these changes and to really be in lockstep with Jason Licht, like, that speaks volumes. And that's not seen often around the NFL.
Yeah, that's very, very true, Adam. One last thing about Todd Bowles, then we'll get to some super chats, some comments, and turn our attention to Jason Licht as well. But another thing I want to see from Todd Bowles this year is kind of exercise some of the demons that are still around with him as a coach. Now, they were able to exercise the demon a little bit with beating Detroit last year, but there's still a couple of teams on the schedule here. I mean, again, the Falcons getting swept by them is inexcusable. They got to start out 1-0. I'd love for them to sweep the Falcons. Actually, they do have to sweep the Falcons because their second game against the Falcons is in the Creamskulls jerseys. So I want to see them sweep the Falcons. And then two other teams that have given the Bucs fits whether Bowles has been the head coach or the defensive coordinator, has been the 49ers. They cannot beat the 49ers for whatever reason. Does not matter if they are over on the West Coast in San Fran or if it's a home game in Tampa. They just can't beat the 49ers. And then, of course, the Rams, another team that have been an absolute thorn in the side of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Also the Bills. I mean, they played the Bills 2 years ago, did not defeat them. So I'd like to see them get the comeuppance on that team as well. So I certainly want to see that from the Bucs this upcoming season and Todd Bowles. What I
remember, the Bills game was when Todd Bowles made the comment, like, no, it's not snowballing. Like, that was at the midpoint of the losing streak. And he's like, oh, no, it's not snowballing. And when in fact it was. And so I think, like, this schedule is really exciting, Matt, because like early on you have the drama of the week 1 matchup against the Falcons, but it extends to, like, they're going to play CJ Stroud and the Texans. They're going to play the 49ers again in the first half of the season. And then after that bye week, you got the Bills and then the Rams. Like, not only does Todd Bowles have to exercise his demons against the Rams, but so does Baker Mayfield, right? Like, it's a revenge game. Like, he needs to go in LA and show him, like, I know you had Matthew Stafford, but I'm gonna ball out a little bit.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. First of all, we need the Bucs to play the Browns. That's like the true revenge game. It was a revenge game against the Panthers a little bit. The only thing that I would slightly disagree about a Baker revenge game against LA is LA if Baker doesn't have that Thursday night game where he drove the ball like 90 yards down the field, I don't know if he gets this opportunity with the Bucs. So I think it's more of like a bro hug of like, thank you for bringing me in. Because they were never going to re-sign him as the starter with all the money they were giving to Matthew Stafford. But I do understand the, hey, thanks for bringing me in, but you didn't re-sign me, so therefore I have to defeat you. And, that's Baker Mayfield very much. I'm not comparing him. It's not the same level of stature, but like Michael Jordan would come up with fake things that didn't happen for him.
Yeah, Kobe Bryant. That mentality.
To get pissed off. I believe in The Last Dance, there was something where Michael Jordan was like at a restaurant and he like made up in his head that George Karl, who was the coach of the Jazz or whatever team he was going up against, like George Karl, big timed him at a restaurant and like didn't say hello when Michael Jordan said hello. And he used that as fuel to like drop 60 points the next time he played against them. So Baker certainly has that in himself as well. I was trying to remember too, because there was the snowballing thing, and then there was also, and this is Bowles like brought this on himself. I think it was after a game. It was either Baker's first year, or maybe it was Brady's last year, where it was a simple question like, "Coach, what happened in that game?" And he ended it with like, "Some guys are here living in a fantasy land, thinking it's like 2020 all over again." So I think that was Brady's last year. But yeah, the snowballing thing certainly was with Baker's first year in that game against the Buffalo Bills. And you're not really going to see snowballs in Tampa, but unfortunately it is getting closer to hurricane season. We're already in hurricane season. So make sure you got all the right insurance to prepare for that hurricane. And of course, there's nobody better to work with in the game than Briar Greaves Insurance, the official title sponsor of PewterReport.com and the Pewter Report podcast. If you're a longtime podcast listener, you probably remember the late great Mark Cook talking about Briar Greaves Insurance. Pewter Report's Scott Reynolds has been a Briar Greaves customer for years, and there simply is not a better insurance company in the Tampa Bay area. Visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com to see for yourself. Briar Greaves Insurance is family owned, and their main goal is helping people. They want to help people find the right insurance policy for you and your family, whether it's home or auto, boating insurance, or business insurance. Turn to Briar Greaves and find out why their personal touch and customer service sets them apart. The days of waiting on hold to speak with an insurance representative that you don't even know are over. With Briar Greaves Insurance, you'll have a relationship with your agent who can answer your questions and advise you on the best policies. As 2 recent hurricanes have shown all of us that live in the Tampa Bay area, there is a cost to living in paradise. Briar Greaves can help make sure you have the right hurricane and flood insurance to make sure you and your home are protected. So visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com today. That's Briar, B-R-I-E-R, Greaves, G-R-I-E-V-E-S. or call their office today at 813-876-4166. One more time, that is 813-876-4166, and tell them that Pewter Report sent you. Also, Jason Licht, who we're going to talk about today, that's Josh Broussard, that's Jason Licht. He also uses Briargreaves Insurance. So if you love the Bucs and you love Jason Licht and you love the fact that he signed a contract extension with the Bucs, use Briargreaves Insurance because Jason Licht uses them as well. Let's get to a couple of these super chats, shall we? Thank you, everybody, for patiently waiting. We'll get to some comments as well. But, of course, super chats get to cut the line. We'll start with Bucs Basement. Thank you.
Thank you
For this $10 super chat, who says, Gruden was given an extension, then was fired the year after. This does not mean Bowles is here long-term. Congrats to Light. He deserves it. Bowles will continue to be Bowles. Cost us games like always. So thank you for the comment, Bucs Basement.
Yeah,
the last part, we kind of already addressed that for sure. I don't necessarily disagree with this. I don't think Todd is going to get fired one way or the other this year, but I think he kind of has a 2-year window to accomplish getting further into the postseason before that narrative really kind of picks up some more hype around. I should say hype because you don't want him to get fired, but some more legitimacy to it. But how do you feel about it, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, across any sports league, you see coaches get fired after getting extended all the time. So I don't think being extended completely absolves him from never being fired. But what I would say to this comment is that while Gruden was extended in 2008, ended up getting fired in 2009, I think this team is in just such a different place than it was back then. I think the Glazers have kind of learned from those mistakes that plagued them during that dark period between like 2004 and 2019 to where they didn't really see the playoffs. And I think the Bucs, like under Light, under Bowles, are not going to completely like let Bowles walk the plank unless things just get really bad. And so I think for Bowles, he is going to see through this contract, and probably if it's like a 3-year deal and he's age 64, then I think that's a position where he retires.
Yeah, he's been on the record that, he doesn't want to coach forever. Now, is that 64? Is that 65? Does he want to coach until 70? Like, I don't think it's going to be a year-by-year thing where it's like, hey, Todd, do you still want to keep coaching?
Like Levante.
Yeah, exactly. Or, I mean, we're getting to that point with
I got one more in me.
Yeah. We're kind of getting to that point with Mike Evans a little bit too, which is sad, but also reality. What would it take though? Like, what if the Bucs only win 7 games this year? Then does Todd Bowles get on the hot seat in 2026? Like, where do we get to the point where, and I don't want this to happen, but again, we have to be real about it. Yeah. Where do you get to the point where you do kind of start thinking about, well, what's next for this team if Todd isn't the guy?
I think coaches should get be cut some slack if the quarterback gets hurt. Like, let's say, like, God forbid, Mayfield doesn't play a full 17-game season. I remember how back in the day, like the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, he broke his collarbone. Brett Hundley came in and the team just tanked. Like, they were horrible. And so, like, you can't put that on the head coach if the quarterback goes down or there's just so many injuries. So I think if the team is fully or relatively healthy and they win 7 or 8 games, Matt, and they lose in embarrassing fashion, no offense, but what the Jets did last year, like they just lost games in such key moments to where like you see that the issue's a coach, then that's when you decide to part with the coach. So I think it's based on circumstance, obviously. But if the team is under 500, that's when you kind of say, we got to cut ties. We got to try to improve. This can't be a Marvin Lewis situation where the Bengals are always 9-8 every single year and just never winning in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Steelers are kind of seeing that too with Mike Tomlin. It's a great debate because it's like, they made the playoffs for 9 years in a row, but they haven't won a playoff game in 9 years in a row. So it's like, well, do you want that like bare minimum consistency of making the postseason and not doing anything with it, or do you want to get on a deep run? If the Bucs were to not be a 500 winning team this year, then I think Bowles has to at least get to the second round of the playoffs in 2026. I think within the next 3 years, the Bucs need an NFC Championship game appearance. And if they don't even have an appearance, then, I mean, who knows? So many things could have changed by then. Who's on the roster, who isn't on the roster. But at that point, then I think maybe you consider, like, who could be the guy that takes them over the hump. I mean, we haven't seen that in quite a while where a team gets rid of a very in the NFL. It happens all the time with the the NBA, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong, but I feel like and the Cowboys are their own crazy, chaotic thing, and they haven't made a conference championship game since you were alive.
Yeah.
But I think it feels like the Bucs are the last team to kind of like get rid of a coach that would get them to the conference championship. It obviously worked with John Gruden, but who's to say if it'll work again? Bucs Baseman with a $2 super chat says it helps Bulls. Bucs play in a putrid NFC South. Adam, what do you think about the division this year? I think it's a little bit tougher than the past couple of seasons, but still compared to the other leagues, not exactly up to par.
Yeah, I will say the Saints, to kind of reverse Cam Jordan's comment, the Saints will continue to be the Saints. I mean, they're a team mired with aging, declining talent, and then salary cap hell. And I think their quarterback situation is going to be a circus between the three guys. So I think they're going to be at the bottom of the division. I think the Panthers are going to be better, getting Derek Brown back to be in the middle of the defense. They added some talent. Another year of Dave Canales. I could see them getting like 7-8 wins. Probably another year or two from really contending. And then the Falcons with Michael Penix Jr., I think it'll be some up and downs. I think he'll show promise, but maybe 8-9 wins. So I think for the Bucs, are still in the driver's seat. They've won the division 4 years in a row. Like, they should not be underdogs. And I don't want to see the Falcons being the favorite to win this division, because it's simply not true. The Bucs, they should be in control of the division because the other teams are still a year or two away.
Yeah, I almost think that the Panthers have a chance to leapfrog the Falcons.
I agree.
Before the Falcons have a chance of, overtaking the Bucs. And a lot of this depends on Michael Penix Jr., if he is going to be the guy, and we'll see him in week one. If Michael Penix Jr. has anything like a Jaden Daniels rookie season, I know it's year 2 for Michael Penix, but a first full year of starting. If he's anything between Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels, then yeah, maybe the Bucs have a little bit more on their hands. But until he's able to prove that, I don't think you can worry just yet. Another thing for me is I don't want the Bucs clinching their playoff spot and their division title in the final week of the season. This year would be against the Carolina Panthers. So now we have the map up on the screen. Everybody can look at it. Adam, you can take a look at it as well. What game should the Bucs clinch their division title?
It would be absolute cinema if it was week 15.
That would be awesome. I was kind of thinking that, but I was like, it's a little too early,
Yeah. If they're like 10-5 though, and they win that game, like, that would be huge. And they clinch the division. All the other teams aren't doing good. Like, that puts the whole creamsicle like jersey bad luck to the side, because they clinch the division. That'd be pretty good. But I would say week 15 or 16. Like, you don't want to see week 17 and 18. Like, that would just be like week 18 against the Panthers. They win 9-0. Like, where's the excitement going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think perfect case scenario for the Bucs, besides going undefeated and winning a Super Bowl and making history that way. I think week 15 Thursday night, they bludgeon the Atlanta Falcons. They win in creamsicle. But hopefully by that time they would have snapped the primetime issues. They beat the Falcons where it puts the Bucs up 3 with 3 to play. So they just have to win one more game to clinch the division. So they essentially put the division on the ropes week 15. They beat Carolina week 16, win the division. And then week 17 against Miami, let's remember, playoff seeding is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Bucs are still playing for the number 1 seed, or they're playing for like a spot to solidify themselves and excuse me, and kind of lock in their playoff seeding. And then week 18, it's Trask time.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me, we see Kyle Trask play. Then that will spark debate for, the rest of the summer once their season is done. And we finally get to see Kyle Trask play a full regular season game. I think that would be the perfect outline for the Bucs season. One more super chat. We'll get to a couple comments later as well. KGH for life. Thank you.
Thank you
for this $5 super chat. Says, it's not one bad season. It's the inconsistencies that have plagued the defense over the years. Miscommunication. QBs throwing for 400 and 500 yards. That was certainly an issue last year. I mean, there were several prop bets that I put that were just over on the passing yards for the opposing quarterback and over on the receiving yards for whatever tight end that the Bucs were playing. I think, again, Todd Bowles had a eureka moment on the defense, and for him specifically, had his own eureka moment. If he doesn't have the same issue, if the same issues arrive this year, if he has the same type of issues, it's the same 3 to 4 game losing streak, players playing off coverage, making excuses about, well, I didn't have the right personnel, then I think you have a right to be angry. Yeah. But I think a lot of the times, like, for example, I know it's a running joke now with me and Justin Herbert and stuff like that. I don't hate Justin Herbert. It's just how I feel about a certain way. But if Justin Herbert pops off, wins All-Pro this year, I'll be the first one to raise my hand and be like, hey, I was wrong about Justin Herbert if he wins a couple playoff games as well. But I think we get to a point, and, maybe it's the ESPNs of the world that kind of drive this as well, is people want to be so right about a take that they're completely unwilling to admit that maybe something was wrong or that people can change. And I kind of feel this way about Todd Bowles a little bit. Like, people see only the mistakes that Todd Bowles have made, and they refuse to be like, oh, well, maybe he can change or maybe he can improve this way. And I feel like that's kind of why there's not as much excitement about Todd Bowles getting a contract extension as there is Jason Licht.
Matt, I fully agree. I think that's a great point because, like, you look at fans and maybe it's 50-50 that they're happy or a little bit frustrated about Todd Bowles getting an extension because they see the guy in 2022 or 2023 where his hands are, like, crossed over. He's stoic on the sideline. You see the same issues week in and week out. And you're like, things aren't changing here. But I think things are now. Like, the tide is turning a little bit, and Bowles is willing to make those changes. So I think at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words, but you're not going to hopefully see those issues defensively where there is that miscommunication or Kirk Cousins throwing for 1,000 yards in 2 games. I think if, like, those issues are resolved, fans as a result should also kind of understand that, like, Bowles isn't as bad of a head coach as he sometimes is made out to be. And I will say one thing about the Justin Herbert thing is, like, in terms of the national media, like, they're so stubborn to not, like, see, like, what's happening on the field. And they're willing to, like, go to great lengths to be like, oh, this is a year. And as a result, teams like the Buccaneers or players like Levante David, they don't get the recognition they deserve because all the focus is always on the big names and the big stars when you really see, like, lesser talent, like, shine out there on the field.
Yeah, it's like there are a number of players that have promising talent and it feels like they're up and coming, but then they never turn that corner. Yeah. And I feel like Kyle Pitts is a good example of that. The Falcons tight end. Just every year, it's like, oh my God, like Kyle Pitts, he's going to do damage in this offense. And then he does nothing. And, like, you're still waiting for that person to turn the corner. I think the Bucs had that a little bit with, like, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. He never turned the corner. So what did Jason?
This is a year.
Right. So what did Jason Licht do? He didn't re-sign him. So therefore, you couldn't play Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. And they went out and got Hassan Reddick. We spent a lot of the show talking about Todd Bowles, but I think, again, he's a little bit more of there's a divide in whether or not people want Todd Bowles re-signed. Really, it was a contract extension. I think universally, though, Adam, there is not one person that is saying that this is bad to have Jason Licht get a contract extension. You hit the nail on the head earlier with both Jason and Todd, but with Jason, just what he's learned, how he's grown, the way the team has been successful. And, Bruce Arians doesn't come here if it isn't for Jason Licht. Tom Brady doesn't come here if it's for Jason Licht. So, I mean, this is just as much of a home run contract extension as you could find in the NFL. This is, like, as much of a no-brainer as I think it could possibly be.
Yeah, like the way that Licht kind of built up the Super Bowl winning team in 2020. He added the veterans at the right time, but I don't think Licht gets enough credit for the work he did retooling the team after the Brady window closed, because it very well could have been a Saints situation where they have a bunch of players that are overpaid and you don't have an answer at quarterback. So what did he do? He started hitting on his draft classes. He found a bargain franchise quarterback for $4 million. Like, there could have been a world where Jacoby Brissett or Taylor Heineke was a quarterback.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I remember that. We talked often about Jacoby Brissett, like, potentially being the quarterback. Thank goodness that didn't happen. Sorry to interrupt.
So, No,
Jeez.
but the way that Light was able to navigate the waters and do what he was able to do, because you look at the 2022 draft class, they found 4 starters plus Rashad White. 2023, they found 4 starters. Last year, they found 4 starters, plus you don't know what Chris Braswell is going to do.
Yeah.
19 of 22 starters on this team are homegrown drafted talent. And then like the ability to find the pieces along the way. There's no doubt that Light is in the Mount Rushmore of NFL GMs. I know you like the Mount Rushmores,
Yes.
but like there's no argument that this is an A+ home run extension.
Oh yeah, current general managers. I mean, certainly on the Mount Rushmore. I think
Howie Roseman, Brett Veach.
Yeah, I think Jason's 3. I mean, another Super Bowl would certainly help. Harry Roseman has to be number 1. And there's a thing about consistency. You know, like Jason Licht has been a GM of a team that has made the playoffs 5 years in a row, 4 straight division titles, the most consecutive playoff appearances by an NFC team, and of course won the Super Bowl in 2020. So his accolades are piling up very quickly. And, you know, I was looking over his draft classes over the years. And let's be real, people. What he's done the past couple of years has been incredible. When you get 4 to 5, like, key components of this team year in and year out. You just mentioned a bunch of them. But throughout the years, you're not going to have guys that are standout players year in and year out. It's just impossible. And you're not going to hit on all 7 draft picks or 8 or 5, however many you have. You can go across the league. You're not going to find teams that, you know, get every single pick right. But there's really only one year where Jason Licht had a draft class where you didn't really have like an impact player. Just looking throughout the years, his first year, of course, Mike Evans, none of the other picks were really that great, but Mike Evans, future Hall of Famer. The next year, Donovan Smith, Ali Marpet, both in round 2. You know, those were offensive linemen of a Super Bowl winning team. Ali Marpet only made 1 Pro Bowl, certainly could have made a lot more. And Donovan Smith anchored the left side for quite a while. Quan Alexander was pretty damn good too, but, you know, he didn't make it for, contract reasons and things like that. 2016 was the only year where, like, legitimately nothing.
There were mistakes.
Vernon Hargraves, Noah Spence, Roberto Aguayo, Ryan Smith, Caleb Beninock, Devontae Bond, Danny Vitale. That was the only year where there really wasn't many impact players. 2017, O.J. Howard didn't live up to the hype, but Justin Evans was damn good. He just couldn't stay healthy. And then, of course, Chris Godwin, who's going to go down as the second best receiver in Bucs history. 2018, Vita Vea, Carlton Davis, Alex Kappa, Jordan Whitehead, even Justin Watson won several Super Bowls, won 1 with the Bucs, won several with the Chiefs as well. All impact players. 2019, Devin White, we all know his story. Jamel Dean still on this team. Anthony Nelson still on this team. Scotty Miller, the impact he had. Sean Murphy Bunting, the impact he had. And then 2020, of course, Tristan and Antoine Winfield Jr. 2021 is probably the only other year where you didn't necessarily get that impact. JTS not on the team. Kyle Trask still here. Robert
Hainsey
was important. Yeah, was important to the growth of Graham Barton last season. And then you kind of mentioned all the other draft classes: Logan Hall, Luke Gedeke, Rashad White, Kalijah, Cody, Yaya, Servassier. Last year, Graham Barton, Tyke Smith. Last year, everybody contributed with the exception of, like, Chris Braswell had a sack, but didn't really see the field the way these other guys have. Elijah Klein, of course, will be an important backup this upcoming year. But damn, 2024 has the chance to maybe be his best draft class of all time. And that's tough, even coming with, Antoine Winfield, Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield in 2020.
Yeah, and the fact that he was picking 26th, like you weren't even picking in like the top half, like there's a blue chip prospect waiting. No, the Bucs went out and they found him. They found those gems, those diamonds in the rough, like Bucky Irving, Jalen McMillan as a 3rd round pick, outperformed like guys drafted in round 1. And then Tyke Smith, when he was on the field, probably the best playmaker last season.
Yeah, big fan of Tyke Smith. Excited to see what he is going to do this upcoming year. But you mentioned blue chip. That reminds me of blue cheese, and that makes me think of wings, which, of course, you can get great wings over at the happy hour of Walk-Ons. Eat like a winner, drink like a champ over at Walk-Ons.
What an amazing comeback, Coach.
You're not kidding. I mean, we did lose the game badly, But coming to Walk-Ons afterward, the team got a much-needed win off the field.
Walk-Ons for the win.
That's right. There are 3 walk-ons in the Tampa Bay area, one in Lakeland, another in Wesley Chapel, and a third in Midtown Tampa, where we had our great Pewter Platinum member meetup a couple weeks ago. Zion McCollum was there. So was Assistant General Manager Mike Greenberg. We had such a fun time interacting with everybody. Can't wait for the next one. Tuesday is the day to go for happy hour because it's all day happy hour. And you can get $5 Tito's as well. Today is Thursday, so you can go to happy hour from 3 to 6 and then 9 until close. But there's so many great food, so many great options for drinks as well. Cannot recommend walk-ons enough. And especially, I know a lot of sports have slowed down a little bit, but they got tons of TVs. You got golf, UFC, baseball, a ton of stuff still to watch all over at Walk-Ons. You heard me mention a moment ago our Pewter Platinum members. I think now is a good time to say thank you to all of our Pewter Platinum members. So thank you to Scott Federico, Rachel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Hezo813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Dale Morris, Zach Brannigan, RP89, Eric McMillan, Connor For Reals, Kevin Thomas, Mario Thomas, Zach Jarvis, Leighton Carter, The Guy is Gifted, and Brandon Riley. Thank you, everybody, for your support. We really appreciate that. We'll also give a shout out to our Premier channel members. By the way, to our Platinum and Premier members, we will have a Pewter Insider coming up tomorrow at 1:30. We're going to talk a little bit more about Todd Bowles and if he can keep this team a consistent winner. So we'll get into all of that. And we have another super chat to get into, unless there's anything else we want to talk about with Jason Licht. But I feel like the guy just gets better and better each draft class.
Yeah, he's aging like a fine wine. I mean, each draft class, I think he learns from the mistakes of the previous year. And it's gotten to the point where there's so few mistakes going year to year. I mean, the Bucs have nailed down this draft class, Matt. There's a reason why earlier this offseason you saw Mike Beal get promoted to VP of Player Personnel, Rob McCartney become an assistant GM, John Spytek, he left for the Raiders, and he had a great draft class, drafting a lot of similar players that the Bucs would have. So, I mean, when it comes to the NFL draft, like, there's no better coverage in Pewter Report, but there's nobody that does it better than the Bucs.
Completely and totally agree. And I think this year's draft class is important too because John Spytek left. Not that John Spytek did everything, but a lot of people were like, oh, well, he lost his top guy. Can he have as good of a draft class? And we surely think so. They got to prove it, but definitely have high hopes for this group. Let's get to this $5 super chat from Meets McGee. Thank you so much, Meets McGee, who says, I see the Falcons' first 7 games being the death of Raheem Morris. I just pray they stay away from our front office and Josh Grizzard. Keep up the great work, guys. Thank you for the kind words, Meets McGee. That is true. I haven't gotten to the point yet where I've thought about the Bucs losing Josh Grizzard because he's got to prove it as well. But let's take a quick look at the Falcons' schedule. Obviously, they start with the Bucs, but the Falcons play. They are home against the Bucs. Then against the Vikings at Minnesota.
That's a tough game.
At Carolina, home against the Commanders, home against the Bills, at San Fran, home against the Dolphins. Let's see. All right, so Falcons, Vikings, Panthers, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the 7th game is against the Dolphins.
I mean, 2-5 or 3-4 at that mark.
Yeah, I guess so. But then they got Patriots, Colts, Falcons, Saints, Jets. Yeah, I mean, for a second-year coach to get fired at 2-5, again, it comes back to patience. You know, like we saw how was the Panthers, they would just fire coaches left and right. Yeah, like Frank Reich, they just fired him. Matt Rule was there for a little bit, but yeah, Frank Reich was there for a cup of coffee. I think you got to let things play out just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, hopefully Josh Grizzard doesn't get taken by another team after this year. That would be insane.
I remember there was a podcast a few days ago, Brad Johnson, he was kind of talking about like quarterbacks, and you want to give them time to develop, and you see why, right? Like Sam Darnold, the Baker Mayfields of the world.
Yeah.
But with NFL head coaches, you also want to give them enough time to let their vision play out, because when they come into a situation year one, you're not going to see what year one of Todd Bowles is like. I mean, in his case, he had a whole assistant tree of guys that Bruce Arians had. So you have to give it time to let things play out. But at a certain point, at that year 3 to 4, that's where you want to see the progress, whether it's Todd Bowles, whether it's a general manager, a quarterback. Like, you have to give it a little bit of time.
Yeah, I agree with that, because there are many situations where other teams wouldn't have even kept Jason Licht after the way things are going. Thank goodness they did, because then they got PA and Tom Brady and then Baker and everything like that. So, yeah, sometimes patience is very important. Even the development of players, like your guy Luke Edeke. We were talking about this on yesterday's show. He started out as a guard and was terrible and was pretty bad. And, people wanted him out of town. So that's why I think even guys like, Chris Braswell, I think let's not throw the jury out on him just yet, because Chris Braswell could, really step it up this year and maybe learn from Hassan Reddick and things like that. So can't rule that out. Before we close out the show, let's get to a couple of comments. He's 0813, who's also a Pewter Report YouTube channel member. Thank you for the comments. Says, love the extensions for both. However, I do feel Bowles is not completely safe if the team fails to live up to expectations this season. I agree to a degree. I think it's a 2-year window for Todd Bowles before you start really seriously having that discussion. What about you, Adam?
Yeah. I think you see it through this year, obviously, but then next year, I still think regardless of what happens, like during the 2026 season, that Bowles won't be fired, like hypothetically, until after the season. Like, the Glazers have faith in Todd Bowles. There's a reason that they kept him over Liam Cohen. They've kept him in the fold in recent years, despite the rough waters, just because he's always found a way to pick back up. And when everyone counts him out, when they lose 6 out of 7 games, Bowles still finds a way to eke out some wins. And that, to me, like, I respect that a lot. And because not a lot of coaches, not all 31 other NFL head coaches would have got this team to the playoffs last year.
Yeah, that is true. And it's all about winning. When you look at career records and stuff like that, you just look at the wins and losses. You don't look at how they won or why they won and things like that. We have a 1999 super chat from T.
Thank you, T.
Thank you very much to T, who says, define Bucs culture in one word or phrases. For example, Chiefs, creativity; Lions, grit; Eagles, dog mentality. That's 2 words. But what's our football culture? Not the culture of everybody is friends. That keeps getting mentioned.
That's a great question.
LOL. That is a great question. My first thought, and you kind of mentioned it before, so I definitely don't want to steal it, but stability. I think foundation. Yes. I think I would use foundation, because whether it's Jason Licht being here for a while, whether it's Todd Bowles being here for a while, the core group, I think foundation or foundational to me is the word, is foundational.
Yeah, I agree with that. A couple other ones that come out are like no nonsense, because like the Bucs,
whether it's together.
Well, little phrase.
Yeah.
But whether it's the locker room, whether it's somebody doesn't pan out, we're going to let them walk out the door. There's just a no nonsense. And another word would be consistent approach to this team, because they've been able to, since 2020, keep that contention window open. And I think that's really hard for a team to do, to go from the oldest to the youngest. Like, that takes a lot of being willing to try different things. Like the Bucs, they tried undrafted free agents that got them to pan out. So I think they've laid the foundation and they've been consistent about it.
Other 2 more words I would use, headstrong. Again, push the words together. I think it could be 1 word. Headstrong. And I would say adaptable, because again, finding Bruce Arians, and then Bruce Arians retires unexpectedly. Tom Brady retires. You got to find a new quarterback. You found the new quarterback. Ryan Jensen, his career is done. Ali Marpet retires, and they're still able to get through it all and continue to build a sustainable winner. Now, again, they benefited from bad NFC South divisions, but they adapted to it. They stayed headstrong, and were able to still be a competitive, successful team. So that's a really good question. Might have to take a little more time to think about that, but those are certainly some of the words I would think of. And thank you for the super chat. It's a very, very interesting question to
A nice
really
spot
round it out.
exercise.
Yes, definitely. Get to a couple of others. Steven Stansfield says, keep drafting well by Chef Light, for sure. I don't see that stopping. Bucs Bateson says, it's not just last season, Matt. Bowles had the same issues since he's been a head coach, but again, he hired Zach Beastline. Todd Bowles made the idiotic decision to keep Godwin in an impossible-to-win scenario versus the Ravens. He cost Chris millions and potentially ruined his career. That's from Lugs Gaming. Whether to play players, I think, is another thing he needs to improve on. When to bench a player for someone else, and again, keep his players healthy and safe as well. But he didn't cost Chris Godwin millions of dollars. Like, he could have taken that contract.
$66 million.
Yeah, and he could have got even more from the Patriots, but he decided to go against it. Benjamin says, bro slid that hand in nicely. Thank you very much.
2 times. Bragg Reeves and Walk-Ons.
Yeah, appreciate that. Always try to learn from Mark Cook, the late, great Mark Cook. Bud Cannibalist says, I just want to punch Sean Payton in the face. I'd even settle for Kevin James. Of course, Kevin James played him in that movie. I'm a big fan of Kevin James, so I would take the punch for Kevin James. But if you want to punch Sean Payton, I'm not going to say anything about it. I won't snitch on it either. Nenad Matic predicting that the Bucs will go 12-5. Also watching from Serbia, so thanks for your support. And Nathan Elliott says, Mount Rushmore of GMs, maybe for current GMs, but not a Mount Rushmore of all time. Light would need more Super Bowls to get there. I think he would certainly need at least another Super Bowl. It's also very difficult to navigate GMs from now compared to 10 years ago, compared to 20 or 30 years ago, because free agency and the draft is so completely different. But I think we can all agree, Adam, that currently he is on the Mount Rushmore of GMs in the league at this moment.
Yes, that's what I meant, Nathan. Not all time. Maybe another Super Bowl or two. We can have that conversation, though.
Yeah, most definitely. This has been a lot of fun. A reminder for everybody that is a Pewter Platinum and Premier member, we will have a Pewter Insider tomorrow at 1:30. And next week, we have a whole slew of topics as well to get into. The 4th of July is on Friday, so we'll have Pewter Report podcast all of next week as well. And like I said, a Pewter Insider coming up this Friday. So that's going to do it for us on today's show. If you're not already doing so, please follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Let us know how you feel about the contract extensions of Jason Licht and Todd Bowles. So, for Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a fantastic weekend. We will see you soon for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.